Hey, welcome into another edition of UP Power. Kevin McNulty with you today without Keegan Cooper. He will be back on Thursday for our first Friday Night Fever of the year. Yeah, we have two this week. It's really exciting with Labor Day weekend. A lot of the high school games on Thursday. And on top of that, NMU and Tech each open their football season on Thursday evening. So all those highlights come to you Thursday night. I'm really just going to get you set for what is a really exciting week for us here in the UP. Football, volleyball getting going a little bit. I'll be at a volleyball match Tuesday evening between Negaunee and Westwood, but let's start with high school football. We'll set the table just a little bit for this weekend. Starting on Thursday, we have some great matchups. Number one, I'm thinking about Gladstone and Marquette. Gladstone visiting Marquette. Of course, Marquette playing in a different conference, UP, LP, so they don't get to see a ton of UP teams throughout the season. Those three teams will be Gladstone week 1, Escanaba in the middle of the season, and then finishing off the regular season with Kingsford. Marquette's a team that I got to see at practice a couple weeks ago. I think they're really strong. They were a playoff team a year ago, got bounced in the first round of their district to Petoskey, a team they beat during the regular season, but they have Ford Richardson back at quarterback, now a junior, some time under his belt as the starter. So Marquette's a really good team, and Gladstone, always good, evergreen, right? So 11-man football, that's where we're starting on Thursday. Should be a really exciting game. Thinking staying in Marquette County, Negaunee taking on Kewaunee, Wisconsin, week 1. That was a game they, usually would play Ishpeming for the last 100 or so year. But Ishpeming moving to 8-player. That game not happening this year, so Negaunee will open with Kewaunee, Wisconsin before really getting into their West Pac schedule. Another game on Thursday I'm looking forward to, Iron Mountain opening this season at Houghton. What really could be another undefeated regular season for Iron Mountain. Robin Martela's last season as the head coach of the Mountaineers. Hope to catch up with him soon about the decision to make 2024 his last season at Iron Mountain. But he'll have a really good team, and he'll have a shot to go deep into the state playoffs in his final year, leading the Mountaineers. Another 11-player game I'm really looking forward to, Kingsford and Escanaba. The Eskimos will be heading over to Kingsford to take on the Flivers. Obviously, Kingsford in Division 5, a really good team from a year ago. They had playmakers like Eli Rouse. He's a guy we've talked about numerous times over the course of the past year and a half. Now playing his college ball at NMU, but last year the UP Player of the Year. So Kingsford will have to work around that a little bit, but Nick Navarra back at quarterback for the Flivers should be a really solid squad. And week 1 they get a test with Escanaba coming to take them on. Friday, an 11-player. One of the very few games we have on the schedule, but it's a big one, Menominee. Opening up the 2024 season, of course, coming off of their state runner-up finish a year ago in Division 7. Tanner Turkoff, the brother of Trevor, will be leading the Maroons into battle as the quarterback. Talking to the Maroons head coach Chad Brandt a couple weeks ago, they will still have the same offensive philosophy with the dual backfield. And one of the things I'm curious to see is, how much different will it look without Trevor Turkoff and Landon Bardowski back there each and every snap. Chad Brandt said they'll have some more playmakers. The ball will be spread around a little bit more, and there's a possibility that Tanner Turkoff will break out to the outside on occasion. Of course, he was a dynamic wide receiver last year as a sophomore, caught a 70-yard touchdown pass from his brother in the state championship game. So the Maroons open on Friday with Marinette. The M&M game should be a good one. Menominee favored in that one. They should be. The battle of, two teams on the Michigan-Wisconsin border taking place. So looking forward to that one on Friday, the M&M game. And for 11-player, those are the games we for sure will bring to you on Friday Night Fever this week. Let's talk a little 8-player. Keegan did get out to see a scrimmage between three really solid teams in 8-player, that being North Central, Norway, and Munising. It was at Munising. Munising down last year, finishing below 500 after 2022. They were a really solid team, went to the 8-player state semifinals with that senior class they had, but the Mustangs could be up again in 2024. Same deal with North Central. They didn't win a state title last year. We've grown accustomed to the Jets winning a lot of state titles. Leo Gorzinski bringing his guys back and, still emphasizing the North Central way, how they do things around there. That has resulted in so many banners for that school. So interesting to see how North Central bounces back after they lost to Lake Linden in the state playoffs a year ago. Lake Linden's a team that, will have some things to shake out as well. Danny Marcotte, their quarterback, not there anymore. Gabe Popko, a big pass catcher for them a year ago. He's going on to play college football at Michigan Tech. So they'll look a little bit different, but they'll be really solid as well. And I want to touch on Norway because they have a lot of continuity on their team as well. Ian Pop, son of head coach Scott Pop, won't be around anymore. He's playing college football at Tech, but so many of those guys that we were really talking a lot about during baseball season because they play multiple sports, the Bai brothers, Bryce Adams, those kind of guys that will step up for the Norway Knights this year. They could be a big-time threat in 8-player as we move forward through the season. They will open at Stevenson Friday night, so excited to see the Norway Knights in action. Let's switch gears a little bit. All of that coming up on Friday Night Fever, both Thursday and Friday. Can't wait to get going with that. And thinking about college sports now, we mentioned NMU and Tech will be opening the 2024 season Thursday night, week 1. Tech at Bemidji State. That matchup has not happened since 1993, so it's been a long time since the Beavers and the Huskies have met on the football turf. Of course, they meet on the ice multiple times every year. So the Huskies going up to Bemidji to open the season should be a test for the Huskies, a team that I think can take a big step forward this season. They were 5-5 a year ago, 1-5 in the GLIAC. They want to improve on that mark for sure, but it starts in the non-conference where they were undefeated a year ago. That'll be tough to repeat that because Bemidji is ranked 20th in D2. They're a really good team from the Northern Sun Conference, and, well, it's a test, week 1. Like I said, they have some guys back that can help them out for sure. Alex Fries, their quarterback, will be returning back behind center. Darius Willis, one of the best players in the GLIAC a year ago, is back at wide receiver. He's a big-time playmaker. He's quick, and he will score a lot of touchdowns for the Huskies this year. And then you think about Alex Fries' high school teammate, Ethan Champney, still there to catch passes from Fries, and their defense, you know what to expect from the Huskies defense. So they'll be solid, but as I mentioned, they start with a tough one. They know it. Hearing from head coach Dan Metlack on Monday, he knows it's a challenge, but they've been gearing up for it throughout fall camp. Well, the time is here to prove, what they've been working on, and we'll see how that goes. Let's talk NMU. Thursday, they open up at home Minnesota Duluth, a team they lost to 47-10, I believe, week 1 last year at Duluth. NMU don't really know what to expect from, a team that went 0-11 last year, but I know they'll be better. So, starting out this season, that'll be a tough one. At home, you just want to, see a football team come together and be competitive. And hearing from Shane Richardson early Tuesday afternoon, that's what he wants. He says guys have been competing all of fall camp. It'll be Aiden Horde, the true sophomore quarterback, behind center for the Wildcats. So, again, a little bit of experience heading in to this season on the offensive side of the ball. Ask Shane Richardson what Aiden Horde learned when he got into the starting lineup and moved up the depth chart last year, and he said he learned a lot, being quicker and catching up to the pace of the college game as opposed to high school. So really curious to see how Horde does week 1 and throughout the season. If he is the answer at quarterback, how he leads that offense. And another thing Shane Richardson mentioned about his team is those 43 guys in his freshman class that he brought in, He's guessing somewhere from 8 to 12 of them will be suited up on Thursday. So they'll be young, and they'll have a lot of things to learn, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're trying to build. And NMU is trying to build over the course of the season, and it starts on Thursday night at the Superior Dome. So we will have that for you on your first Friday Night Fever of the year. NMU and Tech football, as I mentioned, those high school games as well. Looking forward to it. Now, this is a special edition of the pod because the head coach of NMU women's volleyball, Mike Lozier, will join me later in the program. And I'll just touch on them. Still 10 days out from their season opener at Minnesota State. They'll play 4 matches out there before returning home to open up the new Vanderbilt Arena. That'll happen on September 12th. So looking forward to that, seeing the Wildcats be out there. They were 500 a year ago, picked 5th in the GLIAC preseason poll this year. Thinking about Tech volleyball, a really strong program under Matt Jennings has been for a number of years. They finished 4th in the GLIAC last year, kind of worked their way up over the course of the season, as did NMU. They had some great battles, and I'll talk about those with Mike Lozier later in the podcast. But the battles between NMU and Tech, I would expect more of the same this year between those two volleyball programs. Michigan Tech, still 10 days out. They will open September 6th as well. On the road, they're going to be out in Colorado to open the season. Cool start for them before coming back here to the UP. So we'll see how it goes in the preseason for those couple of programs. And just briefly, want to touch on Michigan and Michigan State football. Also starting this week. Neither of them suited up for week 0, which is kind of nice. I don't like week 0. Not a big fan of week 0 because there's so few games. You don't know what to expect. It's not exactly time for football. We get Labor Day weekend this weekend. College football is here. So Michigan State going at it Friday night. And then you have Michigan on TV6 Saturday night, opening up the Big Ten Saturday nights on NBC against Fresno State. Of course, looming over that program has been for almost a year now, the sign stealing investigation, the scandal with Connor Stallions, and who knew, and how much did it affect what they were able to do last year, going 15-0, winning the national championship. Probably not much, but the NCAA did issue a formal notice of allegations against the program in what resulted from its investigation. So we'll see if anything comes of that for Sharon Moore in year 1. That is, looming over the program, like I mentioned. But Michigan's ranked 9th. They could be a playoff team. They should be a playoff team. Maybe the Big Ten will be tough. They're not going to be picked ahead of Ohio State, which spent $20 million on their roster. And then you think about Oregon joining the Big Ten from the Pac-12. Dylan Gabriel, their quarterback, that's a really good team as well. And then you think about Michigan, they have question marks because no Blake Corum, no J.J. McCarthy. How are they going to look with Alex Orji as their quarterback? Donovan Edwards is back. He got a lot of the carries that Corum didn't get a year ago, but that defense, that line, offensive and defensive line, they'll be good. They'll be Michigan, and I think they'll play the same brand of football that we grew accustomed to over the past couple of years with Jim Harbaugh. So they open up Saturday night against Fresno State. And then just a couple weeks before they open the Big Ten season with USC at home, and week 2, one of the best games in college football, Michigan and Texas at the Big House. So it's unlike Michigan football over the past couple of years in that they have a tough non-conference schedule, meaning they play Texas at home, but Texas is a bona fide playoff team in their first year in the SEC. If they take care of business, they have Quinn Ewers back at quarterback. So that's week 2. I guess Michigan gets a little dress rehearsal with Fresno State this Saturday, but college football, really looking forward to it. Then on the other end of it, college volleyball as well, getting set for NMU and Tech to go at it in just about 10 days. So right now I will throw it to my interview with head coach of NMU Volleyball, Mike Lozier. All right, thrilled to be joined now by Enemy volleyball coach Mike Lozier, thanks for joining us. And we are 10 days out from the season. We'll start out right there. 10 days. What do you got to do over the next 10 days to get your team ready to go?
We got to get better, in a lot of ways. We had a scrimmage on Saturday, and we just learned a lot about ourselves. This time of year, it just moves so quickly, and we're just trying to keep up with the pace of things. And our athletes now started class yesterday, so they're getting acclimated with another school year. We're trying to figure out, how we have to improve and what areas are we prioritizing. And ultimately, it's going to come down to learning how to gel as a team, right? Those are the teams early on that win are the ones that figure out how to gel and play together. And then slowly you kind of improve your technical skill as much as you can, and ultimately staying healthy. But to start the year, it's really about, how can we bring this team together as quickly as possible.
You're opening the season out in Mankato. You'll have 4 matches out there, all non-conference opponents. So how do you approach the non-conference, knowing that's going to come again later, Midwest crossover in October? When you start out with these teams that you're not as familiar with, what's the approach your first weekend together on the floor?
Yeah, you just really got to kind of focus on yourselves. I think the blessing and the curse is that nobody has film on the team as they stand right now.
Yeah.
You can go back and watch a little bit of last year's to understand system and some of their returners that have been perennial starters. You start to get an idea of that. But ultimately, you don't know who is going to be on the other side of the net. And I enjoy that, truly, because then you just really focus on yourself and how to be prepared. And, our first match is at, I think, 9 a.m., that first day. And I also, I was kind of annoyed by it when the schedule got released. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, in preseason, we practice at 8 a.m. And you kind of are used to that. And so I'm all right with that. And, we play Moorhead first, I believe.
Right.
And Mankato is in the Northern Sun Conference, which by any measure is the most competitive volleyball conference in the country in Division II. And so we're just excited to get these kind of opportunities to play teams like that, like Moorhead and Mankato. And then I can't remember who our other competition is after Moorhead, but I think Upper Iowa is another one who's, they were in the NSIC, now they're in the GLVC. But ultimately, I want to walk away from that first weekend, hopefully winning, obviously, but staying healthy. That was one of the things at the beginning of last year that really killed us as we came out of that first weekend with 2 pretty critical injuries. Yeah. And it put us in a really difficult spot. And so there's no substitute for health. And so the hope is to come out of that first weekend healthy, learning, and get some W's.
One of your players you absolutely want to see stay healthy throughout the year, Jacqueline Smith, and what she's been able to do. She's one of those players from our perspective that, wow, she's still there. She's still at NMU, still putting up numbers, and she had some injuries last year that she had to work through. First of all, how important is it for Jackie to stay healthy? And secondly, what does her experience and what she's been able to accomplish over her career bring to your team this year?
Yeah, Jackie has been an incredible force for us from her freshman year. She was freshman of the year, helped us win the conference that first year. And so there's really no substitute. It's hard to describe. Every athlete has this ceiling of potential that we try to help realize. And for Jackie, her ceiling is just higher than a lot of people's, right? Her ability to do things where she does things, and I'll look across to the other coach after she does them, and they just throw their hands up, looks at their teams like, I don't know what to do, and that's a rare talent to have, especially at this level. And, it's not just the talent she has, but the experience, like you said, on the floor. Again, there's no substitute for experience. And someone who's been there, she's helped us, win the conference. She's helped us win the conference tournament. She helped us reach our first NCAA tournament berth in 18 years. So she does things for us that others can't. And it's not to say that we don't have depth this year, more depth than we maybe have had historically. But Jackie's health is going to be imperative to us realizing our potential as a team. And so, she is coming off injury, and when she's a 5th-year player, and she was the go-to player at her high school. So you're talking about an athlete that for the last 8 years has been getting set an insane amount of volleyballs and taking swings and getting those reps, and your body just starts to break down. So we just have to be really cognizant of that as we're going through practices and going through the year to limit her reps, put her on a number and say, hey, once you take this many swings, you're not swinging the rest of practice. Once you jump this many times, you're not jumping anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because you can always improve your ball control, right? She's an important passer for us. So that skill, that's a little lower impact. But in terms of the overall journey of the season for Jackie, we're just going to try to make sure that Fridays and Saturdays she's ready to go. And so however we have to limit her in that way, we will, because we need her on the floor. There's no doubt about that.
We hope to see her week in and week out, and obviously setting the ball to her is very important. And setter is one position. Last year you kind of had in flux a couple different players moving in and out. Do you have an answer going into this season? Is it one setter that you're expecting to rack up the majority of assists for you guys, or is it going to be the same where we're working some things out during the beginning of the year?
We have it pretty much figured out. Allie Barlow, I feel comfortable saying, will start day one as long as she's healthy. She was a freshman last year. Coming out of high school, we knew there was going to be this kind of weird situation where Lauren was going to be a fifth-year senior.
Yeah.
She's helped us accomplish great things as well, right? She was the first-team all-conference player. We won the conference. She was our setter. We made the NCAA tournament. And so we knew Allie was going to come in and push Lauren. We didn't know how much, and it was really impressive what she was able to do and earn some playing time. But ultimately, this spring was a huge, huge springboard for her in terms of her IQ, her touch on the ball. And so she came in this fall ready to go. And, it's only been a week and a half, but it's very evident that she's going to be the player distributing the ball for us. Her demeanor is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's very steady. As somebody in the stands that's watching her, you don't see this high energy, these high highs or anything like that. But she's a competitor and she wants to win. She's demanding of herself. And she can deliver a hittable ball. And that's really what we need, and she works every day to get better. She doesn't take anything for granted. Every rep matters to her, and just a really good athlete. And we're excited. I'm excited to have Allie for the next couple of years, probably leading this team in that position, because that is a position, similar to the quarterback. If you have some stability there, it gives everyone a lot of comfort, right? Because she is, the only player really on the team that every possession is going to have contact with the ball, right? If you're passing the ball well enough. And so I think there's a level of trust across our entire team that if we can give Allie opportunities to get it to the hitters, she's going to do it in a really, really good way.
Funny you bring up the quarterback position. This was a question I asked of Shane Richardson earlier because, on Thursday he'll be starting a true sophomore quarterback who got some reps as a freshman last year, was working his way up the depth chart throughout the year. And it's kind of the same thing for Allie. What do you think she learned last year as she got more time in there, more reps under her belt last season that can help her now as a sophomore?
Yeah, her first match that she played last year was against St. Cloud State, who I think they made the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. And so kind of trial by fire. I think, the other thing with her is she took those reps. Yes, there is this desire to help your team win, but ultimately they were pretty low stakes reps in the sense of like, hey, there's no expectations. Go out there, just play the way you're capable of playing. And so she's able to play free and learn and get that experience without necessarily the weight of the world. Because we knew Lauren ultimately was probably going to be the one getting a majority of the reps throughout the year. And so she just got these opportunities, a chance to get out there, to see what it feels like in that moment. And ultimately, it gets her to this point now where today, she has the confidence when she steps out there. Like when she stepped out there on Saturday for our scrimmage, you could feel that level of calmness that oftentimes first time starting, you might have a lot of nerves, and she didn't show that at least. And so I'm excited for her to get out there for the first real match and kind of slowly develop that leadership quality, because she is like, trying to think off the top of my head, I'll be a biased guy and say, Jared Goff, right? Like,
sure.
Like he doesn't need.
We'll get to the Lions.
Yeah, I can't avoid him this time of year. But the thing about him that's so great is it's not fancy, it's not flashy, but he puts up a good ball, right? He knows he has the guys that can get it done. And I think with Allie, it's the same thing. It's like you don't have to run the show. You just have to give people opportunities to get the job done. And Allie has that kind of quality, that calmness about her that I really appreciate.
Absolutely. And thinking about last year, for a little bit more, the adversity you had to go through with the injuries, and by the time you got into the GLIAC season, getting into a rhythm was difficult. But by the end, you finished 500 and are in the middle of the pack, and that's not necessarily where we thought it might go at the beginning of the conference season. What was the challenging part of last season, getting into the conference play, and how did you guys work through it? What would you take away from that?
Yeah, it was tough, just keeping it together.
Yeah.
Right. We play our first match of the season, get a pretty resounding win over an average team. Like, they weren't great, but we beat them pretty well. And then the next morning, I come in the gym, and Jackie's like, I can't lift my arm. And you're like, uh-oh, And then Evan Lashock, who was going to be our second outside, she's dealing with all sorts of ab stuff and can't jump. And so now you're going, okay, well, now we need to rely on all these freshmen who were not supposed to be in that position.
Right.
And as coaches, you have contingency plans, but I would argue that most coaches don't start the year going, let's assume that we lose two of our most important assets. How are we going to handle it, right? And so it really was learning on the fly, a lot of conversations, and not to mention, of our first 8 matches, I think 7 or 8 of those teams made the NCAA tournament the year before. And so it was really tough. And I'll admit, even for me, it was a struggle to not get frustrated with our lack of experience, even though it was no one's fault, right? Everyone was trying their best. But, when you're going up against, St. Cloud State has the National Player of the Year, and she is a stud. And so now we have these freshmen who are coming out of high school, and they're used to playing, some little school, some little kid, and now they're playing this kid who is a full-grown woman who can hit the ball very hard and is very smart and knows it. And so just learning that, that stuff, and I am very unafraid to see things head on and address them head on. And so there were a lot of times where we had to sit in the locker room and be like, this is not okay. We need to admit it's not okay.
Yeah.
Identify it, identify the areas we need to change, and change them. And so that's the part, we talk a lot about. The only people that know what we're truly going through are the people in that room. You do press conferences and you talk to other people about things, and I'll reach out to other coaches and commiserate about what I'm going through, but ultimately the only people that are feeling the intensity of emotions are those inside the locker room. And I think the hardest part, and I talk about this a lot, is the beginning of that year when you're struggling, I have a hard time not thinking about the whole department and how they're feeling about our failures as a team, and the Marquette community who supports us every single day. Even today before coming here, one of our super fans just popped in my office and was like, hey, we're excited about this and that, and see the new arena and see you guys compete again. And you just, this weight that I carry personally as a responsibility, it was really hard. And so to kind of get over that hump in a sense, it felt really good. And it's about not about the destination, but the journey, and what we learned as a team, having those 8 freshmen who now went through that.
Yep.
And we can call back to that. It was one of my first messages, I think our first or second practice, where I said, guys, these are conversations we were having the second week of season last year. We need to make these changes now so that we don't repeat what we did last year, right? And so to be able to call back on that experience, no matter how terrible it was, is an asset to us now, and we can use that as an opportunity to grow. And so I'm pretty excited to start with this group and be able to call back on last year, but not necessarily dwell on it.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I'm looking forward to, of course, is your battles with Michigan Tech this season. They were battles last year. You swept them at home, and then a comeback, 5 sets. You win it in Houghton, and then they got the better of you in the GLIAC tournament. But they're a really strong team again. They're picked 3rd in the GLIAC. You guys picked 5th. What excites you about those battles? Knowing Matt Jennings pretty well at this point, and what kind of coach he is. How much are you looking forward to those matches on your schedule this year?
Always. I mean, Matt. I would venture to say Matt and I are close friends now.
Yeah.
We talk all the time. I saw him this last weekend at the scrimmage. You got to reverse it. So we actually swept him at Tech. We beat them in 5 at home.
That's right, yes.
Because I'll never forget, there was a moment, because TV6 broadcast the game, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Come on, what's the guy?
Dave Ellis.
So Dave Ellis comes up to me before the match. I was like, hey, I just want to grab you between sets 2 and 3, and just do a quick interview. I'm like, yeah, no problem, whatever, it's fine.
When you were down 2-0,
And just getting throttled, just throttled, right? And I'm just fuming. And I'm just like, I need to get in this locker room, and we need to figure this out. And Dave like kind of nudges me. He's like, hey, can we do a quick interview? And I'm like, I'll do it. I've never been more angry. And if you go back and watch the interview, like I said we were tragically bad. It's like we're playing tragically bad, And so I go in the locker room, whatever, come back out, and I'll never forget this. I remember this so well. I come out, and it was like around Halloween is when the game was. I can't remember the exact date.
I think it was Halloween.
A lot of the fans were dressed up, right? And so the student section is right by where we come in, and I kind of look to my left, and their energy is just kind of low. And I don't blame them. We're getting crushed, And I just walk right over to the student section, and I just go, I need you guys. I said, you can't sit on your hands. Like, you got to just give us energy. Anything you got, bring it. And all of a sudden we turn it around. The crowd's going crazy. It's so fun. And so I don't say like the student section is the only reason we won that match, but it was definitely a part of it. And I don't think if they hadn't gotten into it, we may not have done what we did to come back and win that match. And so that was really cool and really special. And that's like, finale Tech versus Northern in Vandeman as it was. To get that win in that fashion was really cool and really fun. And then, winning at Tech was my first time beating Tech at Tech since I think 2017 or something like that. So it had been a while. That felt good. Now they crushed us in the GLIAC tournament. They got the better of us. And so going into this year, it's like every other year. The match holds more weight. The rivalry matters, not only to our programs individually, but to the entire UP. Those bragging rights are important. And let's be honest, across the board, we have to be better against Tech. We have to beat Tech in all sports, right? That should be the starting point when you come in as a coach or as a team. Like, beat Tech. That's how it should be. And it doesn't mean it's the only thing that matters, but it needs to be a priority, I think. And I do think Rick, our athletic director, shares that sentiment, and I share that sentiment. And it doesn't mean I don't love Matt Jennings and what he does for that program. It doesn't mean when we're out of season or not playing them that I don't respect them, what they're capable of. But ultimately, when we're in between the lines, I want to beat them in the most possible way.
For sure. I believe that was one of 2 or 3 things Dave Shayak said to me during his press conference. What's your goal in year one? And one of those things was beat Tech, despite him having a friend over there in Joe Sean. So it's great. It's rivalry. We're looking forward to it later this season. I'm forgetting when we get to talk rivalry volleyball. October 10th in Marquette, Michigan Tech will come see the new Vandeman Arena, which we'll get to in a second. Then October 30th, so similar time to last year, you will be in Houghton and perhaps meet again in the GLIAC tournament. That's another one of those things that you mentioned about the crowd, the student section. With volleyball in particular, when you're stacking points, the crowd gets a little bit louder each and every time, and that's something I really enjoy about volleyball and intimate environments like Vandeman Arena. You're getting ready to debut at September 12th against Findlay. What is the vibe around there? How can you describe it and how it's going to be good for your program?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I don't know how many people have been able to poke their head in, but it is really cool. The number one thing that people say is they swear we've moved walls. They believe we've knocked down walls. It just feels bigger. It feels bigger, more like an arena, which is really cool. Having the seating on all 4 sides is really cool. The sidelines are chair back seats, which we do have a lot of retirees, older fans, and so a little bit more comfort for them, which is a nice thing. And I've only sat in the old bleachers a couple times. They are so uncomfortable. They were the worst. And so that's going to be a huge win. Everyone talks about the video boards. They're massive.
They are.
They're going to be great. And we're getting software that's going to allow us to project, stats throughout the match, things like that, which is going to be really cool. A difference than, a lot different than before. The old video boards were great. They weren't capable of a lot.
Yeah.
So the hope is that these ones can be a little bit more interactive. I don't know. It just feels new. It feels fresh. They've updated the hallway outside of Vandeman, so there's going to be full-time concession stands. So it's not the pop-up concession stands anymore in the hallway. There's a lot of stuff honoring the history, like in the hallways, that you'll be able to see. I don't know. It's going to be so great. I think just everyone's going to be excited. And honestly, as a supporter of the department, more than anything, I'm excited to watch basketball there. I'm excited for basketball to get that experience, to fill the Vandement with fans, where the Barry was just an impossible ask to fill the Barry for basketball. But they're going to fill this venue, and it's going to create an atmosphere that I don't think people from northern Michigan have experienced since Hedgecock, maybe, and so I think it's going to be cool.
I'm sure a lot of opposing teams don't experience that playing Division II basketball quite often either. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll get a tour. I haven't been in there in a couple of weeks. Looked pretty good when I saw it. The video boards, will you glance up for certain stats or anything during a match?
For sure, yeah. I mean, we get paper stats between sets.
For sure.
But there are some venues where they'll project some stuff, and I try to track it a little bit. But I also don't get too caught up in it, I just like to watch the play, how we're going to win the next point. But you can notice trends. Hey, they're digging, twice as many volleyballs as we are, and you can just use it as like a quick, hey guys, the one thing I get so frustrated about is when I feel like we're being outworked, right? And so when you can look at stats and go, look, they are clearly outworking you defensively. They're getting more opportunities than we're getting, and so that's a big part of it too. But I think from the fan as a viewer, they're going to get a lot out of it.
I always find it interesting when players or coaches actually look at the video boards. Tyler Glasnow, who pitches for the LA Dodgers, says he'll look up if there's a park that has his horizontal or vertical break on a pitch, which of course it's a scoreboard. It's designed for a fan, but he'll be paying attention to it during the game. So I find it interesting when that happens. Did you watch any volleyball in the Olympics?
I did.
What was your impression of just the overall event? Typical hardwood volleyball as opposed to beach volleyball. What did you enjoy about the Olympics?
Part of why I love the Summer Olympics is every 4 years, so many people want to talk to me about volleyball, right? They're like, I was watching the Olympics, I saw this,
true.
And there's just an influx of energy for the sport, which is always a super positive thing. What I took from it is I think women's volleyball is getting impressively athletic, where before men's volleyball, it was like these guys are touching so high, hitting the ball so hard. It was like kind of women was all finesse and whatever. But now it's like these women are doing are just incredible. And this is not a positive story, but I was watching the gold medal match. The women were in the gold medal indoor against Italy, and I didn't know much about Italy going into that match. And it was at 7 a.m. And so I'm kind of half awake, and my buddies are texting me about the match, and what do we need to do? And I'm watching, and Karch Karai is the women's volleyball coach for the national team, and he's an all-time great athlete, all-time great coach.
Yeah.
And he's making a couple subs and doing stuff, and ultimately you could just feel like this is like a universal feeling. If you've ever played sports, the feeling of this team has our number. And you're watching Italy, they make a mistake, and just the way they handled the mistakes, where they were just like, you could tell they were just brushing it off. And our women, every time they won points, you could feel this sense of urgency to we got to build on this. We got to keep going. And it's not to say that the women couldn't have come back, but you just felt like from a momentum standpoint, no matter how much we tried to do from, strategically or just an energy standpoint, we were never going to be a match for Italy. And it's interesting to see those types of things, and having been a part of those, even at our level, how universal sports can be in a lot of ways, regardless of the level, and how things shift from mentality. And I don't know, it was fun. I love beach. I played beach all the time in college. I love watching beach volleyball. The amount of athleticism that's required to play beach. I never ever tried to play beach volleyball, but when you jump, you feel like you're not even leaving the ground.
Right.
It's so hard. And to see these athletes jumping out of the sand, you're like, this is so incredible.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing. Anyone who's ever played any level of basketball, when there's a guy on the other team who can't miss, like a Steph Curry, you're just like, what do we do?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's Steph Curry or some dude in rec league.
Yeah,
exactly. You're just like, God, this guy just cannot miss.
He can't miss, and we're going to lose.
The frustration. You're just like, okay, well, we'll try, but yeah.
We'll wrap up. The Detroit Lions almost ready to open their season. Do you have a prediction? As a huge Lions fan from Lower Michigan, how do you feel heading into this season? Obviously, with all they accomplished last year, crushing end, how are you feeling?
Thank you for reminding me.
It happened.
It did happen. How do I feel? I feel really good. I think, Here's the problem. In the moment, everyone looks at the preseason game against Pittsburgh and says, Henderson Hooker looked unbelievable. We just gave the bag to Jared Goff. I love Jared Goff.
Yeah.
I loved him the moment we signed him. I was one of the few people that was like, I love this guy. And he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder, which is exactly what we needed. I didn't know Dan Campbell at all at that moment.
Yeah.
But now learning about Dan Campbell, he was the perfect man with Jared Goff to say, we're going to turn this thing around. And the thing that I've enjoyed about the offseason is, we're paying people. Get Sewell's bag. Get St. Brown locked up.
Just the pillars of the offense, I think, is so smart.
St. Brown is another one. It's like this perfect combination of people. Like, talk about a guy with a chip on his shoulder, right? You can name the 17 other receivers taken before him, where they went. And he just grinds. And, I watched these videos, and I don't know if you watched the Receivers show on Netflix. But
I did.
He is such a good dude, and, just works his tail off. And then Sewell is I think he's rated the top offensive lineman in the entire league right now. He's just, I feel so good. And the thing that makes me feel good about going into this year is they're not talking about last year. They're talking about,
sure.
Dan Campbell's messages. The work will speak for itself. The work will speak for itself, And I love that. And I'm getting goosebumps. Like, they sold out the preseason game.
And they forced a false start because they were so loud during a preseason game.
Like, God, how can you not love the Lions right now? I don't know. And having suffered,
I'm a Bears fan, and I love the Lions right now.
I know.
And I'm really excited to see how the division shakes out, because obviously Green Bay is really good. Chicago will be a lot better. They weren't even terrible last year. Minnesota still is no pushover in the division either. So I'm really excited. The Lions, I heard that from Taylor Decker day one of training camp. He was very adamant, passionate that we're not talking about last year. We're not doing that.
Yep.
And what you said about signing those guys like St. Brown and Sewell and obviously Goff, the team that beat them last year in the playoffs and went to the Super Bowl, they have those pillars in place. The Trent Williams, their left tackle, and their quarterback, which has worked out very well, and a Deebo Samuel who can do everything. Of course, Lions also have a Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy on a rookie deal.
Sam Laporta.
Yeah, that can just make plays. So football season, volleyball season, it's a great time of year. Yeah. Mike Lozier, appreciate you joining us here on UP Power, and that will do it for this edition of the podcast. Join us again next week when we'll have all your recaps from high school and college football. Should be a great weekend, and thanks for being here.